He was just a poor mechanic, quiet, invisible, hanging off the side of a Manhattan skyscraper, inching his way down one window at a time. He was used to the silence, the isolation, the wind pressing against him as he worked. But when he reached the 36th floor, something happened. Something strange, something that would change everything. Inside that office, behind the thick glass, a woman froze mid-step. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She walked right up to the window, locked eyes with him, and whispered something he never expected to see. She mouthed the words, "I won't let you go." What happened next wasn't chance. It wasn't luck or fate in the romantic sense. It was the beginning of a story that would shatter every barrier between two lives. One suspended in the sky, one behind polished glass. If stories of kindness, redemption and love that climbs through every wall speak to you, this is one you'll never forget. Liam Carter's hand moved with practiced precision, his squeegee sweeping arcs across the gleaming windowpane, leaving trails of water that shimmered in the morning sun. The harness around his shoulders groaned softly as he leaned into the motion, suspended dozens of stories above the Manhattan streets below. From this height, the chaos of the city blurred into quiet geometry, cars like ants, people like shadows, buildings stacked like puzzle pieces. It was quiet up here. Peaceful in a way. But all that stillness shattered when he looked through the next window. He'd cleaned thousands of panes of glass in his years, luxury condos, tech towers like penthouses of the untouchable, and not once had anyone paid him any attention. He was just the help, invisible, disposable. But this time, someone was looking. Behind the glass stood a woman, mid-30s, striking not in the loud way, but in a kind of serene elegance. Cream blazer tailored to perfection. High cheekbones, eyes the colour of storm-washed stone. She looked like someone who belonged in that world of polished glass and gold trim. Someone powerful, untouchable. At first, Liam assumed she was on a call, brows furrowed, lips parted slightly. But then she turned and looked right at him. Not through him, not around him. At him. Their eyes locked. Time stopped. She stepped toward the glass slowly, cautiously, like she might scare him away. Her hand lifted and pressed gently against the pane. Liam's breath caught. He couldn't hear her, of course, but he didn't need to. He could read her lips, her mouth moving carefully, slowly, deliberately. "I won't let you go." He blinked. Did he read that right? Her expression had shifted, gone from calm and poised to something raw, fragile, something she didn't expect from herself. And for a moment Liam felt the air thin, not because of the altitude, but because something bigger than both of them had just cracked open. He nodded, awkward and unsure, then turned away, suddenly aware of how rough his hands looked, how stained and threadbare his uniform was, how much he didn't belong in that reflection she saw. And still, she hadn't looked away. That afternoon, Liam was back in Brooklyn, standing in the back room of Wyatt's garage, a tiny grease-stained shop wedged between a crumbling bookstore and a sandwich shop. The old radio croaked out twangy country tunes as he stared at nothing in particular. Wyatt, all oil-stained sleeves and smirking wisdom, glanced up from under the hood of a beat-up Chevy. "You look like you saw a ghost," he said, "or fell in love." Liam chuckled under his breath. "Just a weird day at the office." "The window-washing gig again?" Wyatt asked. Liam nodded. "Yeah, can't drop it yet. Sam's treatments aren't getting cheaper." Wyatt softened at the mention of Liam's younger brother. "How's the kid holding up?" "Brave," Liam murmured. "Too brave. Tries to hide how bad it gets." The two men worked in silence for a moment until Wyatt handed him a wrench and said, almost casually, "You know, sometimes fate doesn't knock on your door. Sometimes it just stares straight at you, through 36 stories of glass." Liam nearly dropped the wrench. Across the city, Eleanor Wynne sat in her office, untouched lunch cooling on her desk. Her fingers grazed the smooth glass where her hand had met his only hours earlier. She couldn't stop thinking about it, about him. 10 years ago, she had been in a car crash outside Buffalo. A stormy night, a rental car wrapped around a tree, the smell of smoke and oil thick in the air, her ankle trapped, her breath shallow, rain falling in heavy sheets. And then he had appeared. A man with strong hands and quiet eyes had pulled her from the wreck just before the flames took hold, wrapped her in a coarse grey cloth, said she'd be okay, and then, like a ghost, vanished before help arrived. She never got his name, never saw him again, until today. It was him. That face. A little older now, a little warier, but those same steady eyes. And something inside her knew. This wasn't coincidence. A knock at the door pulled her back. Her assistant poked in. "There's a call from facilities, something about an equipment inspection?" "Yes," Eleanor replied, her voice firmer now. "I want Liam Carter back. Tomorrow. Schedule it." Then she stood. "Actually, don't just send him up. Tell them I want him brought inside." That night, in a small apartment lit by the flicker of a second-hand lamp, Liam sat on the edge of the bunk bed watching Sam, his younger brother, twist knobs on an old radio. She said, "I won't let you go," Liam murmured, like she knew me. Sam looked up. "Maybe she does. She's a CEO, Sam. I'm a grease monkey with a side job dangling off buildings. Maybe she sees something you don't." Liam looked out the window. From this side, the glass wasn't a wall, it was a mirror, or maybe a doorway. But a thought struck him. Maybe that day on the highway wasn't the end of something. Maybe it was the beginning. The next morning, Liam stood outside Everlight Tower. He stared up at the glass monolith rising like a shard of sky into Manhattan's skyline. A soft wind tugged at his jacket. Someone had requested him by name. That had never happened. Still, he clocked in like always, tapped his ID at the front desk, rode the executive elevator in silence, surrounded only by his own reflection, unshaven, eyes tired, hands scarred. When the doors opened on the 36th floor, she was there. "Mr. Carter," Eleanor said, stepping forward. Her voice was calm, refined, but there was a softness to it now. "Thank you for coming." He swallowed. "They said it was an inspection?" "It is," she said, glancing toward the windows behind her, "but not of the glass." Without waiting, she turned and walked into her office. He followed, hesitantly. It was a beautiful space. Warm, clean, sculptural lighting, soft rugs, shelves lined with books. But Liam's eyes were drawn to the wall of windows, the same ones he had cleaned yesterday, the ones that had changed everything. "You wanted to speak to me?" he asked, standing awkwardly. She turned and looked at him fully. "Do you remember a car crash?" she asked. "Outside Buffalo, 10 years ago." His breath caught. "It was raining," she continued. "You pulled someone out before the car caught fire." "I didn't stay." "No," she said softly. "You were gone before the ambulance arrived. But that woman was me." His knees nearly gave out. He grabbed a nearby chair to steady himself. "You wrapped me in a grey cloth," she said, "held my arm, told me I'd be okay. I never forgot your voice. I searched for you for years." He could barely breathe. "I wasn't trying to be a hero." "I know," she said. "That's why it meant everything." Silence stretched. Then she gestured to a nearby seat. "I wanted to thank you, not just with words, but with something that matters." "If this is charity," he began. "It's not." Her tone was firm. "I'm starting a new project, a sustainability initiative. We need real-world thinkers, people who fix things, people like you." Liam stared at her, stunned. "I saw you work. I remember what you did. I believe you're meant for something bigger." For a long moment, neither spoke. Just the quiet hum of the city filled the space. And then, gently, she added, "I'm not asking for an answer today. Just don't disappear again." Liam let out a dry chuckle, the kind that held more weight than humour. "You met someone?" Sam asked. Curiosity piqued as his eyebrows shot up. "Please don't tell me it's another building manager with a collection of bizarre cats." Liam rubbed the back of his neck, eyes downcast. "No," he said, voice carrying a note of disbelief even now. Sam paused mid-step, suddenly more alert. "Wait, who then?" Liam looked up. "A CEO," Sam blinked. "Come again?" "Eleanor Wynne, Everlight Tower." Sam froze. "As in the Eleanor Wynne, the one Forbes profiled for launching that clean energy fund that's changing how half the state powers itself?" Liam nodded slowly. "The same one." Sam let out a long, impressed whistle. "Okay, wow." "Let me guess, she dropped her purse out the window and you caught it mid-air?" Liam shook his head, half smiling. "No. She remembered me from a car crash 10 years ago. I pulled her out." Sam's expression shifted from playful to stunned. "You're kidding." "I never knew who she was, not until yesterday." Sam stared at him, open-mouthed. "And she, what, offered you a job?" Liam's voice softened. "Something more than that. Said she's building something big. Said she needs someone real." Sam looked at his brother like he'd just said he'd been tapped for the moon mission. "And what did you say?" "I told her I'd think about it." Sam stepped closer, his face suddenly more serious than Liam had seen in weeks. "Liam, How many times do I have to tell you? You don't have to carry everything alone. You've done it for me since Mom and Dad died. Maybe it's time to let someone or something carry you for once." Liam was quiet for a long time. His eyes traced the faded lines on the pavement beneath their feet. "I'm scared, Sam," he admitted. "I don't belong in that world. That building. Those people. They wear suits that cost more than my truck. They talk like they've never changed a tire or skipped a meal." Sam didn't hesitate. "Maybe, but none of them pulled Eleanor Wynne out of a burning car. You did." That evening, far above the noise of the city, Eleanor sat at a long dining table, its surface pristine, the penthouse around her quiet to the point of stillness. Everything in the space, from the curated art on the walls to the seamless lighting, had been chosen to project power, precision, and perfection. And yet her thoughts were anything but composed. She had replayed their conversation over and over since he'd left, passing every sentence for subtext, every pause for meaning. Liam had been cautious, guarded even, but he had listened, and that was something. She had extended plenty of invitations in her life, conference keynotes, advisory board positions, executive partnerships, but none had felt like this. This one hadn't been about business. It had been personal, and for the first time in years she had felt something stirring that wasn't strategy or ambition, but something older, something gentler, hope. When the doorbell rang, she frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone. Opening the door, she felt her breath catch. Liam stood there, framed by the polished marble hallway like a shadow out of place. His dark jacket looked slightly too rugged for the setting, and his stance spoke of someone who had spent the last hour arguing with himself, and losing. "I thought you said you'd think about it," she said gently, voice laced with warmth. "I did," Liam replied, his voice steady but low. "Still am." Her brow arched with a mixture of amusement and curiosity. "But," he exhaled slowly, "I realized something. You're not the only one who remembers that day. I do too, and for the last 10 years I've been running from it, from what it meant and what it might still mean." His words lingered in the air, raw and unfiltered. Then came the breath, the decision. "You said you're building something real," he said. "If that's true, I want to help." A flicker of surprise passed over her face, only to be replaced by something softer. She stepped aside without another word. "Then come in." And he did. The Mustang sat quietly in the garage tucked just off the Hudson River, nestled inside the shell of an old brick warehouse Eleanor had converted into her private workshop. It was the kind of place that felt stubbornly alive, dusty, echoing with the sounds of tools and time, its air tinged with oil and memory. It was not where anyone expected a CEO to spend her afternoons, but for Eleanor, it was sacred ground. This was where she came when the gloss of boardrooms and billion-dollar strategy sessions became too heavy. This was where the noise faded and the weight of pretending lifted. And today she wasn't alone. Liam stood at the open hood of the '68 Fastback, sleeves rolled up, grease creeping past the edges of his palms. Eleanor leaned nearby, arms folded loosely, watching him with quiet wonder. "I've seen dozens of these at car shows," he murmured, eyes trained on the engine. "But I never thought I'd get under the hood of one that still breathes like this." "I bought her with my first real bonus," she said, stepping a little closer. "Everyone I knew was going for Teslas or vintage Ferraris. But this," she gestured toward the car, "this reminded me of my dad." "He taught you to love engines?" Liam asked. She smiled, the kind that carried more memory than joy. "He taught me to respect the things that carry us forward." There was a pause then, long enough for the sound of distant traffic to drift through the open garage door. When Liam finally stood, he wiped his hands with a rag and looked at her. "And the people who carry us?" Her smile faltered slightly, becoming something more tender. She walked to the passenger side and opened the door, revealing a photo tucked into the sun visor. Two people, father and daughter, grinning with grease-streaked hands. "That was our last day in the garage together," she said, her voice barely a whisper. 3 months later, he was gone. Heart attack. Liam stared at the photo, his chest tightening. He'd be proud. Not many people hold on to something like this. She turned to him, meeting his eyes. Not many people would run into a fire for a stranger. His jaw tightened, gaze falling. "I didn't think. I just moved." "Exactly," she said. "That's what I need. Someone who doesn't pause when it counts. Not another strategist or smooth talker. Someone who gets his hands dirty. Someone people trust without needing a title. Liam leaned back, the metal bench groaning beneath him. You keep talking like this is bigger than a job. It is, she said, matter of fact. It's a statement. And what kind of statement? That real change doesn't come from the top, she replied. It starts with people who know what broken feels like, who've lived through struggle. I want this project to reach the places no one talks about. To bring kids and mechanics and engineers together to build something that runs, not just looks pretty in a slideshow. He exhaled. That's a lot of faith to put in someone you barely know. She looked at him, eyes clear. I didn't just meet you. I've been looking for you for a decade. Silence fell, thick with things unsaid. When Liam finally spoke, his voice was low. For years I tried to forget that day, not because I regretted it, but because every time I remembered, I wondered, why me? Why was I the one who stopped? What if I hadn't? But you did, she said softly, and I've lived with that gift every day since. They stood there for a beat, caught in something unspoken. Then Liam cleared his throat. So what exactly would you need me to do? She smiled, a glint of excitement behind her calm exterior. Come to the design table. Help us build the mechanical side. Then teach it to others. You'd be the bridge between blueprint and boots on the ground. He chuckled. I've been called worse than a bridge. She stepped a little closer, the faint scent of lavender and motor oil drifting between them. You know, people are already talking, she said with a smirk. Oh yeah? He asked, folding his arms. Let me guess, your shareholders think you've lost it? Some of them, she said, unbothered. They think hiring a mechanic with no degree for a high-level sustainability rollout is insanity. And you care? She tilted her head. I care about what's right, not what makes a neat headline. Then she stepped past him, fingers brushing over the Mustang's hood. I've spent so much of my adult life performing a version of myself, she said, polished, perfect, palatable. But maybe, just maybe, you walking back into my life is the universe reminding me that I'm still allowed to care. Liam watched her. You talk like someone who doesn't need anyone. She looked back at him, something flickering in her eyes. That's the story people like me learn to wear. But sometimes the mask cracks, and when it does, you just hope someone's still there to see the face underneath. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked slowly to the front of the car, ran a hand along the metal, then turned to her. I'll stay, he said. For now, but not because I want your charity. I never thought you did. I'll stay, he repeated, because I've spent too many years fixing broken things without ever building anything that lasts. Her smile returned, softer this time. Then let's build something. And in that quiet garage, tucked away from the din of a world that never slowed down, something had begun. Not just an engine, not just a project. A purpose, a partnership, and maybe something far more powerful than either of them had yet dared to name. Liam hadn't called, hadn't texted. He buried himself in work at the garage during the daylight hours, each bolt and gasket a distraction from the ache inside. But when the sun dipped low and the city lights flickered on, he found himself right where he needed to be, beside Sam's hospital bed. Every night, like a guardian posted on silent duty, his presence was quiet, constant, unshakable. Even as he sat beside Sam, it wasn't just the beep of the machines or the sterile scent of antiseptic that filled his mind. It was her, Eleanor. The way her eyes held him, not as a fixer-upper, not as some noble cause to be salvaged, but as a man. Just a man. Her gaze had seen past his scars, past his silence, and somehow made him believe that maybe, just maybe, his story wasn't finished yet. And still, he said nothing, until the fourth night. He came in later than usual, drained from a double shift and surviving on lukewarm coffee and a fatigue that clung to his bones. When he pushed open the door to Sam's room, the sight inside stopped him cold. Eleanor was there. She sat at Sam's bedside, speaking in a voice soft enough to blend with the hum of the monitors. When she heard the door, she turned and rose, her expression calm but impossible to read. I used the emergency contact on his chart, she said gently. I hope that's all right. Liam blinked, words caught in his throat, too stunned to respond. I've been worried, she continued, her voice trembling just enough to betray the weight behind it. You vanished. I didn't know what was going on. I thought maybe you didn't want me involved. But Liam, I wanted to be. You think I reached out because I felt obligated? Like you were some burden I had to carry? She took a step closer, and there was no anger in her tone, just hurt. Raw and real. Do you honestly believe I look at you and see someone who needs saving? His shoulders sagged under the truth. His eyes dropped to the floor. I thought we had something real, she said, voice tight. Something honest. And then the second life got hard. You shut me out, because you thought it wasn't my weight to bear. She took a long breath, steadying herself. 10 years ago, you pulled me from a wrecked car. You didn't ask questions. You didn't hesitate. You saved my life because it was the right thing to do. No conditions. No agenda. So let me ask you now, why is it so impossible to let someone do the same for you? The question struck him with a force nothing else could. His throat tightened. I've spent so long being strong, he said finally, voice barely audible. For Sam, for myself, I don't know how to be anything else. Maybe, Eleanor said softly, real strength isn't just about carrying others. Maybe it's about knowing when to let someone carry you too. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick with everything he hadn't said, everything he didn't know how to admit. Then, quietly, almost ashamed, he looked at her. I'm scared, he confessed. Scared that if I let someone in, they'll see all the things I've tried to keep buried, all the pieces I've been too afraid to show. Eleanor stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. I already see them, she said, and I'm still here. Her hand reached for his, steady, sure, and Liam, the man who once pulled a stranger from flames with blistered hands and a steady heart, allowed himself to be held. Later that night, they sat together in the hospital corridor, two figures side by side on a bench, watching rain trace delicate lines across the windows. The coffee was terrible. The moment was perfect. Tomorrow, she said softly, her head resting lightly against his shoulder, I want you back on the project. Not because you owe me, but because the world needs what you bring to it. I need it too. He nodded slowly. I'll be there. And right there in that sterile hallway, surrounded by the quiet thrum of machines and footsteps echoing down linoleum floors, something shifted. Not in the world, but in him. For the first time in years, Liam Carter stopped dragging his past like a weight behind him, and started carrying it like a story still unfolding. He held her face as if it were something sacred, his calloused fingers brushing gently along the curve of her jawline. His voice came low, steady, not just words, but something deeper. Something he'd never allowed himself to say out loud. I've spent my life fixing what was already broken, he murmured, his eyes locked on hers. But with you, I wanted to build something. A quiet tremble passed through her. Tears welled up, shimmering like glass catching sunlight, but her smile held firm, strong in its tenderness. Then let's build it, she whispered back. And when he kissed her, it wasn't rushed or uncertain. It was rooted. This wasn't a beginning. This was the reconnection of something long separated, the coming together of two chapters that had always been part of the same story, but had spent too long on opposite pages. No distance, no barrier, no fear, just a vow. One forged not in declarations, but in quiet resolve, in courage, compassion, and the steady, unwavering belief that love, when chosen freely and fearlessly, could become the strongest foundation of all. The morning sunlight hadn't crept fully across the skyline when Liam's phone rang. The cracked screen lit up with an unknown number. His hand hovered over the answer button. Something in his chest tightened. Good news never came at 6:12 a.m. Liam Carter? A clipped voice asked. Yes? This is Sandra Levinson with Denton and Price LLP. You've been named in an intellectual property complaint filed by Orion Automotive. For a moment, the world stilled. Steam from the mug he'd just filled curled into the air, forgotten. His voice came out slow, uncertain. I'm sorry, a what? The complaint states that a hybrid engine modification you recently showcased infringes on proprietary methods developed during your prior employment at Orion Automotive. His brows furrowed. That was over a decade ago. I wasn't even on the engineering team. I was just a tech. There's a non-compete clause and a confidentiality agreement from 2011, the voice replied, devoid of sympathy. Orion claims you've violated both. A cease and desist has been issued. There was a brief silence. Do not contact Orion directly. All further communications must go through legal channels. Then the line went dead. Liam stared at his phone as though willing the call to reverse itself, as if disbelief could alter reality. The silence in the garage was broken only by the metallic clatter of a wrench hitting concrete. Wyatt looked up from under the hood of a car. "You okay?" he asked. Liam turned, his face pale, stunned, and far too quiet. "They're suing me," he said, his voice distant. "Orion, from back when I was just a damn technician." Wyatt straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "Suing you for what?" "They're saying one of the modifications I made for our training car overlaps with some buried tech they had in a memo from 12 years ago. A memo I probably never even read." Wyatt's jaw tightened. "You think this is about old paperwork?" Liam shook his head, bitter. "No, I think it's because we're finally being seen and they don't like the direction we're pointing the spotlight." Wyatt crossed his arms. "So, what are you going to do?" Liam looked away, the weight pressing against his shoulders again. "Same thing I always do. Try to survive." Elelana was deep in a planning meeting about the Newark site expansion when her phone buzzed. A single text. "Come to the garage. Urgent. Liam." She didn't ask questions. She left. When she arrived, he was pacing outside, his arms crossed tight like a barricade, his expression thunderclouded and unreadable. She rushed toward him. "What happened?" He handed her the notice. She read it in seconds, the legal language cutting like barbed wire. Her jaw clenched. "They're not just coming after the engine," she said. "They're trying to shut you down." "No," Liam replied, voice rough. "They're trying to discredit me, to paint me as a thief, someone who stole something I barely understood at the time. They know it isn't true. They don't care. They've got lawyers, I've got a wrench and a YouTube channel." Eleanor looked up, eyes hard but unwavering. "You've got me." He stepped back, pain flickering across his face. "I don't want you dragged into this too." Her tone didn't waver. "Too late. I'm already in it. And if they come after the Foundation, they'll come for me next." "I can't let them ruin you," he said. She stepped forward, placed her palm over his chest, right where the ache lived. "You once saved my life," she whispered. "Let me protect yours." For a moment he didn't speak. The silence stretched. Then he nodded, slow but certain. Within 24 hours, the press caught wind. Headlines bloomed like weeds, some cautious, others brutal. Innovation or infringement. From garage to courtroom, the trouble with engines of hope. Liam barely slept. Each news alert felt like another hammer blow. But while he withdrew, Eleanor took the wheel. She called in every favor, every connection she'd made in her past life. Lawyers, journalists, engineers who'd once worked at Orion and left with similar bruises. By Thursday, she stood before the community board where Liam had once delivered his first hopeful speech. "He didn't steal anything," she said, clear and calm. "He built something. Something that mattered. This lawsuit isn't about intellectual property. It's about power. It's about silencing someone who dared to innovate outside the system." Her words spread like fire. People rallied. Former employees anonymously submitted evidence refuting Orion's claims. A pro bono legal team stepped in. And a week later, without fanfare, Orion dropped the case. No apology, no explanation. Just a dry memo. But they'd won. That night, Liam and Elelana sat on the rooftop of her building, the city stretching endlessly below. The letter of withdrawal was in his hands. He'd read it 5 times already, but the disbelief hadn't faded. "You know what scares me the most?" he said, eyes not on the letter, but on the lights in the distance. "That it almost worked. They almost convinced me I wasn't allowed to build something better." She turned toward him, her gaze steady. "They wanted you to believe that because people like you change things." "I've been afraid for so long," he said. "Afraid of failing, of not belonging, of being found out." She took his hand, fingers threading through his. Her voice was soft, but full of steel. "Then stop being afraid. You belong. Not because someone gave you permission, but because you earned it." He looked at her, really looked, and something loosened inside him. "They'll come again, won't they?" "Maybe," she said. "But next time they'll know they're not just coming for you." He nodded, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Liam Carter exhaled, a real breath, one that didn't just fill his lungs, but those long empty chambers of his soul. He had once believed his only gift was fixing broken things. But now, as he looked out over the city and into the eyes of the woman who'd seen his worth before he had, he finally understood. He wasn't just fixing anymore. He was building. A life, a future, a love strong enough to endure. The late July sun stretched its golden limbs across the rooftops of Queens, casting a warm halo over the former warehouse now transformed into a beacon of second chances. Its freshly painted sign, Engines of Hope, East Branch, gleamed in the early light, a quiet declaration that something beautiful had taken root here. But the buzz that filled the air wasn't from machinery or tools. It was something more human, more alive. Inside, young apprentices gathered at their stations, sleeves rolled up, heads bent in focused curiosity. Volunteer mechanics offered their time without asking for anything in return. Neighbours trickled in with their dented bicycles, cracked fenders, and even just questions, offering not only their broken things, but their pride, their stories, their presence. What had once been nothing more than an uncertain dream, a whisper of an idea in a forgotten corner of the city, had now become a movement, a real one, a growing one. Liam stood in the open bay doorway, arms crossed, watching the newest cohort of teens begin their first week's assessments. 2 more garages had already opened, one in Newark, another in Yonkers. A wait list had formed. There were even murmurs, real talks of expansion into Detroit and Cleveland. But today wasn't about expansion or press releases or future planning. Today, Eleanor had prepared something entirely different. Something he hadn't anticipated. It wasn't a fundraiser or a media appearance. It was something softer, something more sacred. A reunion. He saw her walking across the sunlit lot now, jeans hugging her legs, a white button-down loose and light in the heat, a weathered leather satchel slung diagonally across her chest. Her hair was tied back, but a few strands had rebelliously slipped free. She didn't bother fixing them. She looked calm, grounded, like someone who no longer belonged in boardrooms or behind sleek glass offices, but in places where hands got dirty and hearts got healed. "I still think you're secretly plotting a board meeting and just forgot to CC me," Liam said with a smirk as she reached him. She grinned, that playful spark in her eyes. "You'll survive." "What is this all about?" he asked. "You'll see," she replied with a mischievous smile, slipping past him into the garage like a secret she was dying to reveal. By mid-morning, the front lot had transformed. Folding chairs were carefully arranged in neat rows. A long table stood at the centre, draped in a white cloth and adorned with pictures of lemonade, weathered photographs, and handwritten notes that looked like they'd been gathered from a dozen lifetimes. Liam raised an eyebrow. "This feels suspiciously ceremonial." Eleanor didn't argue. "Today isn't for the students," she said quietly. "It's for the ones who never got a spotlight, the ones who held everything together behind the scenes, the people who gave quietly and never took a bow." He looked again. The guests were arriving without fanfare. Retired factory workers, local teachers, librarians, mentors, men and women whose names never appeared in headlines but who had changed lives in alleyways, kitchens and church basements. There was a man who had taught his daughter how to replace brake pads on the weekends. A woman who ran a free reading program every Saturday for a decade. Quiet revolutionaries, builders of character, patches of broken pieces. "These people," Eleanor whispered, "helped someone when no one was watching. And I thought, maybe it's time someone watched." Liam turned to her, his chest tight with something deeper than pride. "You planned all this?" She nodded gently. "You taught me something. That impact doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it moves silently, steadily, like a well-tuned engine." He looked back at the growing crowd, people who'd loved and laboured without recognition, and something shifted inside him. It wasn't gratitude exactly. It was kinship, a sense of deep purpose. This wasn't just his story anymore. The ceremony began simply. Eleanor stood on a small wooden platform beside him, framed by the open bay doors and bathed in morning light. Her voice carried a quiet strength. "Today," she said, "we honour those who created change not with money but with presence, who showed up again and again for others, even when no one clapped." She looked out over the crowd, then back at Liam. "This garage exists because of you," she said, her voice catching slightly. "And because of one man who never asked for thanks." Liam blinked, stunned. He showed me, she continued, that living a life of quiet integrity can be louder than the biggest resume. That kindness, when repeated and unwavering, becomes revolutionary. Then she turned to him fully. Liam Carter, come here. Hesitantly, he stepped forward. The applause was long and warm, just long enough to make him deeply uncomfortable. And yet, beneath it all, he could feel it, the sincere affection, the realness of it. Eleanor reached down into her bag and pulled out a plaque, hand-carved, simple, beautiful. She placed it in his hands. It read, "The Bridge Builders, for those who cross over and bring others with them." He ran his thumb over the engraving. "You didn't have to do this," he murmured. "I wanted to," she said, her eyes shining. The applause returned, even stronger now, and for once, Liam let it wash over him, not as a man uncomfortable with attention, but as someone finally starting to believe that he had earned his place. That he wasn't just a survivor of his past, but an architect of the future. As the sun began its slow descent and the scent of coffee mingled with late afternoon laughter, Liam and Eleanor strolled the perimeter of the lot, their steps unhurried. "Been thinking," she said suddenly. "Dangerous," he teased. She smiled. "I want to make this permanent. The foundation, the program, maybe even a national apprenticeship track. We've been reacting to momentum. I want to lead it." He studied her face, searching. "You really left that world behind, didn't you?" "I did," she nodded. "But I didn't leave my skills, just the system that told me how to use them." He paused. "So what do you need from me?" She stopped walking, turned to face him fully. "You already gave me the blueprint," she said softly. "I just need you to keep doing what you've always done." His brow lifted. "What's that?" She didn't hesitate. "Be the bridge between the kids who don't yet believe they matter and the world that desperately needs them." He took her hand in his, a quiet warmth pulsing between them. "You think we're ready for something that big?" This time there wasn't a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "I think we already began." A warm gust stirred the trees beyond the fence. From the garage came the soft clinks of tools and the rising laughter of apprentices. The future was already humming, like an engine purring in perfect harmony. And as Liam looked down at the plaque in his hand, the Bridge Builders, he felt something shift inside him for good. This wasn't just redemption, it was legacy. Not one built from concrete or acclaim, but from compassion, courage, and 1,000 quiet acts of showing up when it mattered most. He squeezed Eleanor's hand. "Let's build the rest of it together."